The message came at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Admiral Park was sleeping in his small cabin aboard the warship Indomitable when the alarm woke him. He had been dreaming of his daughter's wedding, which was supposed to happen in 2 weeks. He would never make it to that wedding now. The communication officer's voice was shaking when Park reached the bridge. "Sir, you need to see this. It's from the Dominion." Park felt his stomach drop. Everyone in the galaxy knew about They were an ancient empire that had existed for 12,000 years. They had conquered 47 species during that time. Some of those species no longer existed. Others worked as slaves in mines and factories. They believed that younger species existed only to serve older ones, and humanity was very young indeed. The holographic display flickered to life. A face appeared that was not human, that looked like tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 eyes and no nose. Their mouths were wide and filled with small, sharp teeth. This particular wore golden armor covered in symbols that Park did not recognize. "I am High Archon OK of the Dominion," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold like stones grinding together. "I speak to the leaders of the human species. You will listen." Park stood completely still. Around him, his bridge crew had stopped breathing. "Your species has expanded to 17 worlds," OK continued. "This expansion was not approved by the Dominion. You have taken resources that belong to greater peoples. This cannot continue." The alien's 4 eyes seemed to look directly at Park, even though this was just a recording. "You will surrender the colonies you call New Sol, Prime, and Station. All humans on these worlds will be integrated into Dominion labor systems. You will also pay a tribute of 60% of your annual mineral production. These terms are not negotiable." Park felt anger rising in his chest. Integrated into labor systems. That was a polite way of saying enslaved. "You have 100 hours to accept these terms," OK said. "If you refuse, the Dominion fleet will demonstrate what happens to species that do not understand their place. We will begin this demonstration with your Earth." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Lieutenant Han was the first to speak. She was young, only 26 years old, but she was the best tactical analyst in the fleet. "Sir, did you see the data packet attached to the transmission?" Park had not noticed it. "Show me." His fingers moved across her console. Numbers and coordinates filled the screen. Her face went pale. "These are navigation coordinates," she said quietly. "They're not coordinates for our colonies. They're coordinates for Earth's solar system. Entry points, defensive positions, population centers." She looked up at the Admiral. "Sir, they were never going to negotiate. This is an invasion plan. They're going to attack Earth no matter what we say." Park stared at the data. She was right. They had already decided to attack. The ultimatum was just for show, to make them look reasonable to the Galactic Assembly. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. Calculated quickly. If they left when this message was sent, and if they're using standard fold space travel, they'll reach Earth in 72 hours, maybe less. 72 hours, 3 days to prepare for the largest military force in the galaxy. Earth's defense fleet had 12 warships. They had thousands. Park picked up his communicator. "Get me President, Priority 1. President was 53 years old and had gray hair that she refused to dye. She had been a soldier before she became a politician, and she still carried herself like one. When Park explained the situation, she did not panic. She did not cry. She simply asked questions. "Can we evacuate?" she asked. "No, Madam President. Not enough ships, not enough time." "Can we surrender and then fight later?" Park thought about it. "They don't leave survivors capable of fighting. If we surrender, they'll disarm us completely. We'll never be able to resist again." "Then we fight," said. It was not a question. "Madam President, they have 3,000 warships. We have 12. Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was hard. Admiral Park, I'm going to tell you something my grandmother told me. She survived the occupation of Korea in the 20th century. Do you know what she said? No, ma'am. She said that when someone comes to take your home, you make them pay for every inch of ground. You make the cost so high that they think twice before coming back. And even if you lose, you make sure the whole world sees what you did. You make sure no one forgets. Park felt something change inside him. The fear was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Something older and fiercer. What are your orders, Madam President? Call back every ship we have. Every military vessel, every cargo ship, every mining platform that can hold a weapon. Contact our colonies and tell them to send everything they can spare. We have 72 hours to turn 12 ships into an army. That's impossible, Park said. Admiral, I didn't ask if it was possible. I asked you to do it. Park almost smiled. Yes, Madam President. The next few hours were chaos. Messages flew across human space at faster-than-light speeds. Ships changed course. Factories that made farming equipment started making weapons. Engineers who built houses started building armor plating. On the Indomitable, Han worked without sleep. She studied every piece of information about that humanity had collected over the years. Battle reports from species they had conquered, technical scans from distant observations, rumors and stories from traders who had seen ships. She found something on Hour 16. Admiral, she said, her voice rough from exhaustion, I need to show you something. Park came to her station. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, too. No one on the ship had slept. Look at this, said. These are shield readings from a battle between thee and a species called the Lost, but they managed to record detailed scans of shield technology. So look at this pattern. She pointed at a wave form on the screen. Every 3.7 seconds, there's a tiny fluctuation in the shield harmonics. Just for a moment, maybe a tenth of a second, a small section of the shield becomes weaker. Park leaned closer. Can we exploit it? I don't know yet, but it's something. It's a crack in their armor. Park put his hand on her shoulder. Keep working. Find me more cracks. As returned to her research, Park looked out the bridge window at Earth hanging in the darkness. Blue and white and green, covered in clouds and oceans and forests. 8 billion people lived on that planet. His daughter was there, planning a wedding that might never happen. The thought humans were weak because they were young. They had studied human ships and weapons and found them inferior. But they had not studied human history. They did not know about the wars humans had fought against each other, the impossible victories, the stubborn refusal to surrender even when all hope was lost. They did not know what humans became when their home was threatened. Park made a silent promise to himself. They would learn, and they would remember the lesson for the rest of their existence. If they survived. The news spread across Earth like fire through dry grass. Within 6 hours, every person on the planet knew that an alien fleet was coming to destroy their world. The government did not hide the truth. President believed that humans fought better when they knew exactly what they were fighting for. She stood before the cameras in the presidential palace in Seoul. Behind her, screens showed images of Earth from space. Her voice was calm and steady when she spoke. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, I will not lie to you. In 66 hours, a fleet of 3,000 warships will arrive in our solar system. They have come to conquer us. They have come to enslave us. They believe we are too young and too weak to stop them. She paused and looked directly into the camera. They are wrong. Across the planet, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In factories and farms, in schools and hospitals, in homes and shelters, 8 billion humans heard their president speak. They believe we are weak because we are young, but we are the species that survived ice ages with nothing but fire and stone tools. We are the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats. We are the species that split the atom and walked on the moon and reached the stars. We have fought plagues and famines and wars, and we are still here. We are still standing." Her voice grew harder. "They have never seen what we become when our home is threatened. They are about to find out. Every ship that can fly, every weapon that can fire, every person who can fight, we need you. Not to survive, to win." She raised her chin. "This is Earth, this is our home, and we do not surrender." The speech lasted only 3 minutes. Its effects would last for centuries. Captain was 61 years old and had been retired for 7 years. He had spent those years fishing on the coast of Korea and complaining about his back pain. When the president's speech ended, he called his old crew. "Get to the port," he said. "We're going back to space." His ship was called the Steady Wind. It was a cargo hauler designed to carry grain and machinery between Earth and the colonies. It had no weapons, thin armor, and engines that were 20 years old. Within 48 hours, it had been transformed. Engineers worked around the clock to attach batteries to the cargo hull. Welders sealed armor plating over the vulnerable sections. Programmers rewrote the navigation systems to handle combat maneuvers. When they were done, the Steady Wind was not pretty. It looked like a metal beast covered in scars and spikes, but it could fight. Looked at his crew. They were not soldiers. They were merchants and pilots and engineers, people who had spent their lives moving cargo through the peaceful trade routes of human space. Now they stood on a warship, wearing military uniforms that did not quite fit. "I won't lie to you," said. "Most of us probably won't survive this. They have thousands of ships. We have one cargo hauler with some guns stuck on it, but here's the thing. My grandfather fought in a war long ago back on Earth. His side had almost nothing, old weapons, not enough food, soldiers who were really just farmers and students. They fought anyway, and they won. You know why?" His crew waited. "Because they were fighting for their home, and that makes people do impossible things." He smiled, showing missing teeth. "So let's go do something impossible." All across human space, similar scenes played out. Mining ships from the asteroid belt attached drilling lasers to their hulls. Research vessels mounted experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. Transport ships filled their cargo bays with missiles and flew toward Earth. The original 12 warships became 50, then 100, then 200. On the Indomitable, Han had not slept in 40 hours. Her eyes were red and her hands were shaking from too much coffee, but she had found something important. "Admiral Park," she said, "I need to show you the shield analysis." Park came to her station. He looked almost as tired as she did. "The 3.7-second fluctuation I found," explained. "I've figured out how to exploit it. If we time our shots precisely, we can hit during the weak moment. It won't destroy their shields completely, but it will let about 30% more damage through." 30%, Park repeated. "That's something." "There's more." Pulled up another screen. They use a standard combat formation that hasn't changed in 3,000 years. They put their big ships in front and their smaller ships behind. It's designed to overwhelm enemies with firepower. So it means they're predictable. They fight the same way every time because it always works. They've never fought anyone who could challenge them enough to make them change. She looked at Park. "They don't know how to adapt. We do." Park studied the formation diagrams. An idea began to form in his mind. "What if we don't fight like they expect?" he said slowly. "What if we don't form lines and exchange fire like civilized species are supposed to do? What if we fight dirty?" Smiled for the first time in days. "What did you have in mind, sir?" They worked together for the next 10 hours, designing tactics that no species had ever used before. They called it Protocol, after an island in Korea famous for a road that appeared when the sea parted. It was a plan based on one idea. If you cannot match your enemy's strength, use his strength against him. Meanwhile, Doctor was working on a different problem. She was a quantum physicist. 43 years old, with wild hair and glasses that were always crooked. Her research team had spent 10 years developing something called a gravity lance, a weapon that could create a focused gravitational pulse strong enough to crush anything in its path. The problem was power. The gravity lance needed more energy than any ship could provide. Using it would burn out the ship's entire power system. Doctor had explained this to the military years ago. They had thanked her for her work and filed the project away as interesting but impractical. Now she stood before Admiral Park with a new proposal. "The gravity lance works," she said. "It just destroys the ship that fires it." "That's a significant problem," Park said dryly. "Not if you only need to fire once." Doctor adjusted her crooked glasses. "If we aim it at their command ship, we could cripple their entire fleet in one shot. Military structure is very centralized. Kill the head and the body becomes confused. And the ship that fires the lance? It would survive, barely. But its power systems would be completely destroyed. It would be dead in space." Park thought about it. One shot, one chance, everything riding on a single moment. "Can your team have it ready in time?" Doctor smiled. "Admiral, we've been waiting 10 years for someone to let us use this thing. We'll have it ready in 20 hours. As she left, Park looked out the window again. Ships were gathering near Earth, hundreds of them now, a strange collection of warships and freighters and mining vessels. It was not the most impressive fleet in the galaxy. It was not even close. But it was human, and humans had a habit of surprising people. 48 hours remained until they arrived. The galaxy watched, expecting a quick massacre. They were about to witness something very different. The Armada dropped out of fold space at exactly the predicted time. 3,000 warships appeared in the darkness beyond Neptune, their hulls gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. It was the largest military force assembled in 200 years. Species across the galaxy watched through long-range sensors, waiting to see another young civilization fall. High Archon OK stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was a ship 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons that could crack planets. He had commanded this ship for 600 years. He had never lost a battle. "Begin scanning for human defensive positions," he ordered. His officers worked their consoles. One of them frowned. "Archon, we are detecting human ships near the third planet." "How many?" "Approximately 94 vessels." OK's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Intelligence reports had said 12 warships, not 94. 94, he repeated. "Where did they come from?" "Unknown, Archon. Many of them do not match military specifications. They appear to be civilian vessels." A slow smile spread across OK's face. The humans were desperate. They were sending cargo ships and mining vessels against a proper war fleet. It was almost sad. "Move the fleet forward. Standard conquest formation. We will be done with this by nightfall." The Armada began to move. 3,000 ships advanced toward Earth like a wave of death. Their formation was perfect. Heavy warships in front, support vessels behind, exactly as fleets had arranged themselves for 12,000 years. Near Earth's moon, Admiral Park watched them come. "All ships hold position," he said calmly. "Wait for my signal." His fleet looked strange compared to the enemy. The warships were mixed with cargo haulers and mining platforms and research vessels. Some ships had welding marks still visible on their new armor. Others had weapons mounted at odd angles because there had been no time to do it properly. Lieutenant Han sat at her tactical station, watching the enemy approach on her screens. Her fingers rested lightly on her console. Everything depended on timing now. "Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 30 seconds, she reported. Park nodded. "All ships prepare for evasive pattern 1. Execute on my mark." They opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across space, thousands of them, lighting up the darkness like a deadly sunrise. They were aimed at where the human ships were supposed to be. But the human ships were no longer there. Park shouted. The human fleet exploded into motion. Not in lines, not in formations, but in what looked like chaos. Ships scattered in every direction, accelerating and braking and spinning in ways that made no tactical sense. On the Eternal Dominion, OK stared at his display. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Unknown, Archon. They are not following any recognized combat doctrine." They were not. Human pilots were flying by instinct, by training, by the desperate creativity of people who knew they were outmatched. They wove between plasma bolts. They used asteroids as cover. They flew so close to each other that the targeting computers could not track them separately. And every 3.7 seconds they fired. The first ship to die was a destroyer on the outer edge of the formation. Its shields flickered at exactly the wrong moment, and 3 human rounds punched through its hull. The ship broke apart in a shower of debris. "We have lost the crushing wave," an officer reported, his voice showing the first hint of uncertainty. OK did not understand. Shields were the strongest in the galaxy. How were the humans getting through? The battle continued. Human ships darted in and out of the formation, never staying still long enough to be targeted. They fired in coordinated bursts, timing their shots to the millisecond. More ships began to take damage. Captain pushed his converted cargo hauler through a gap between 2 cruisers. His weapons officer was a woman named Song Myra, who had never fired a weapon in anger before today. She was doing an excellent job. "Target the destroyer on the left," ordered. "Aim for the engine section." Myra fired. The rounds hit during the shield fluctuation. The destroyer's engines exploded, sending the ship spinning out of control. "Good shot," shouted. Then he saw something on his screen. A battleship was turning toward them, its main cannon charging. "Full reverse," he ordered. Too slow. The plasma bolt was coming right at them. Then another human ship flew between them and the enemy, a small fast attack vessel that took the hit meant for the steady wind. The fast attack ship's shields failed, and fire bloomed along its hull. "Who was that?" demanded. "The Soul's Pride, sir, Captain Menu." Watched the damaged ship on his screen. It was hurt, but still flying, still fighting. Menu had risked his ship to save a cargo hauler full of merchant sailors. "Remind me to buy that man a drink if we survive this," said. Then he pushed his ship forward again. On the Indomitable, Admiral Park was watching the bigger picture. The first phase was working. The human ships were causing more damage than anyone expected, but they were also taking losses. 14 human ships had been destroyed in the first hour. They could not keep this up forever. "Signal all ships in Reserve Group 2, he ordered. "Time to show them what else we have." From behind Mars, from hidden positions in the asteroid belt, from beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon Europa, more ships emerged. Hundreds of them. "Archon," an officer said, his voice now clearly frightened, "we are detecting new contacts. Many new contacts." "How many?" 400. No, 412 human vessels. OK felt something cold in his chest. The humans had hidden ships. They had planned this. They had known they were coming and had prepared a trap. For the first time in 600 years, he considered the possibility that he might lose. "All ships tighten formation," he ordered. "Focus fire on the largest human vessels." It was the wrong order. The human fleet was designed to work together. The big ships drew fire while the small ships attacked from the sides. The converted cargo haulers and mining vessels swarmed around the battleships like angry insects, too fast and too many to target effectively. On the science vessel horizon, Doctor watched the battle and waited. Her gravity lance was charged and ready. The ship's captain, a young woman named, kept them hidden behind a large asteroid. "Not yet," Doctor said. "We only get one shot. We have to wait for the perfect moment. Captain nodded. Her hands were sweating on the controls, but her voice was steady. How will we know when it's time? Doctor smiled. We'll know. The battle raged on. Human ships continued to fall, but they took ships with them. The ratio was terrible. Humanity lost 5 ships for every vessel destroyed. But there were supposed to be no human victories at all. The galaxy had expected a massacre. Instead, they were seeing a fight. Admiral Park looked at the tactical display. They were hurting the enemy. They were making them bleed, but it was not enough. Time for Phase 3, he said. Han looked at him with concern. Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. It required their ships to get very close to the enemy, close enough to touch. Are you sure, sir? Park thought about his daughter, about her wedding, about the 8 billion people on Earth who were counting on him. Send the signal, he said. It's time to show them what humans do when they're desperate. Phase 3 was madness. Every military expert in the galaxy would have said it was impossible and stupid. That was exactly why it worked. 12 human fast attack ships flew directly at a carrier. They did not fire. They did not try to evade. They just flew straight at the massive ship at full speed. The gunners could not understand what was happening. Were the humans surrendering? Were their controls damaged? They hesitated for just a moment, confused by behavior that made no sense. That moment was enough. The fast attack ships flew straight into the carrier's open hangar bay, the place where fighters were launched and recovered. Inside the hangar, they finally opened fire, not at the enemy, but at their own reactors. 12 ships exploded at once, inside the carrier's belly. The blast ripped through the ship from within, destroying what shields could never protect. The carrier broke apart like an egg, scattering debris across the battlefield. And from the wreckage, 12 small escape pods flew out. The human pilots had ejected at the last possible second. 3 of them were recovered by friendly ships within minutes. The others were captured by They would become prisoners, but they would live. And they had destroyed a ship 1,000 times larger than their own. High Archon OK watched his carrier die and felt something he had not felt in centuries: fear. They flew inside, he said slowly. They sacrificed themselves. The pilots appear to have survived, Archon, an officer reported. They ejected before impact. That made it worse. They had not been trying to die. They had planned this. They had calculated exactly how long they could wait before ejecting, exactly how close they needed to get, exactly how much damage they could cause. These humans were insane, and they were winning. Signal the fleet, OK ordered, his voice hard. New orders. Ignore the human ships. All weapons target the planet itself. If we cannot have Earth, we will burn it. 300 warships broke formation and accelerated toward the blue planet. Human ships tried to stop them, but there were too many. The vessels pushed through the defensive lines, taking damage but not stopping. They reached orbital range and began firing. On Earth, the first plasma bolt hit a city called Jakarta. The blast killed 2 million people in 1 second. The next bolt hit Cairo, then New York, then Mumbai. President stood in her command bunker beneath Seoul and watched her world burn. Her staff was crying. Some were screaming. She remained standing, her face like stone. "Get me Admiral Park," she said. Park's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, alarms were wailing and his crew was shouting orders. "Madam President," he said, "I'm sorry, we tried to stop them." "I know," her voice was steady. "How many are in orbit?" 300 ships. Most of their fleet is still engaged with us, but these got through. Can you destroy them? Park hesitated. Not without leaving Earth undefended against the rest. If we pull our ships back, the main fleet will follow. We'll be fighting in orbit while they continue bombing. Closed her eyes. Outside the bunker, she could hear the distant thunder of explosions. Her country was dying. Her world was dying. Admiral, I'm going to ask you something impossible. Again. I'm listening. Can you stop them all, the ships in orbit and the main fleet, at the same time? Park was quiet for a long moment. Then Han's voice came through the channel. Madam President, I have an idea, but it's dangerous, really dangerous. Tell me. Explained quickly. Earth had an orbital defense grid, hundreds of satellites armed with defensive weapons, designed to protect the planet from asteroids and small attacks. The grid was never meant to fight a fleet, but if they overloaded every satellite at once, they could create an electromagnetic cascade. The pulse would disable every electronic system within range. Every ship in Earth orbit would lose power, said. They would be dead in space, unable to fire, unable to move. Including our ships, Park added. Yes, sir, including ours. Understood immediately. You would disable both fleets, make it a fair fight. Not fair, said. After the pulse, we would have to fight on manual control, visual targeting, chemical thrusters, basic systems only. They have never fought like that. They depend on computers for everything. But humans. Humans flew to the moon using less computer power than a modern calculator. Finished. We can fight without machines. They cannot. It's a gamble, Park said. If it doesn't work, we lose everything. President looked around at her staff. They had stopped crying. They were listening, waiting for her decision. Through the bunker's cameras, she could see Seoul burning, her city, her home. Do it, she said. Give the order. Admiral Park turned to his crew. You heard the president. Signal all ships near Earth to prepare for electromagnetic pulse. Manual control only after the burst. Estimated recovery time for our systems, 15 minutes. His weapons officer looked up. Sir, what about the gravity lance, Doctor's ship? Park had almost forgotten. The horizon was still hiding behind its asteroid, waiting for the right moment. Signal the horizon. Tell them to fire now before we trigger the pulse. Aim for the eternal dominion. On the science vessel, Doctor received the message. Her hands were shaking as she made the final adjustments to the gravity lance. Targeting the enemy flagship, Captain reported. Range, optimal, shields cycling. Wait for the fluctuation, Doctor said. Wait, wait. On her screen, the shield harmonics of the Eternal Dominion dipped, just for a fraction of a second. Now, the gravity lance fired. The weapon created a focused point of gravitational force that traveled at nearly the speed of light. It hit the Eternal Dominion's shields during the weak moment and punched through like a fist through paper. The pulse continued into the ship, crushing everything in its path. On the bridge of the flagship, High Archon OK was thrown from his command chair. Around him, the ship screamed. Metal twisted. Systems exploded. He felt bones break in his ancient body. Report, he shouted. What hit us? Unknown weapon, Archon. We have lost propulsion. Life support failing on decks 40 through 60. We are crippled. OK tried to stand and could not. His leg was broken. His ship was dying. He had ruled this vessel for 600 years, and now it was being killed by creatures that had only reached space a few centuries ago. Continue the attack, he ordered. Signal the ships in orbit too. He never finished the sentence. The electromagnetic pulse hit. Every light on the Eternal Dominion went dark. Every screen went black. Every weapon stopped charging. The great ship drifted silently through space, as dead as a stone. And it was not alone. 300 ships in Earth orbit lost power at the same moment. They stopped firing. They stopped moving. They simply floated, helpless, while below them the cities continued to burn. Captain felt his ship shudder as the pulse hit. The lights flickered and died. His screens went dark. For a moment there was silence. Then the emergency lights came on, red and dim, barely enough to see. Report, he shouted. Computers are down, someone called back. Navigation is down. Weapons are on manual backup only. Can we fly? Chemical thrusters only, no gravity drive. Laughed, it was a strange sound in the darkness. I learned to fly on chemical thrusters before all this computer nonsense. Everyone strap in, we're doing this the old way. Through the dim red light he could see his crew's faces. They were scared, they were exhausted, but they were still fighting. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I'm picking up a signal. Old-style radio, low power. It's from the Indomitable." "What does it say?" The officer smiled. "Surprise." Across the battlefield, human ships were coming back to life. Their computers were still down, but humans did not need computers. They flew by sight and instinct, using skills that were hundreds of years old. They fired weapons manually, aiming through windows instead of screens. The ships remained dark and silent. Their crews did not know how to function without technology. They had no manual backups because they had never needed them. They were the most advanced military force in the galaxy, and they were helpless. The human counterattack began. The battle lasted 3 more hours. It was not really a battle anymore. It was a hunt. Human ships moved through the disabled fleet like wolves through a flock of sheep. They fired at point-blank range, targeting engines and weapon systems. They did not try to destroy every enemy ship. There were too many, and humanity had lost too much already. Instead, they disabled them, left them drifting and helpless, their crews alive but unable to fight. Captain's ship, the Steady Wind, personally disabled 11 vessels. His weapons officer, Song Myra, had become an expert at hitting weak points while flying on manual control. She would later receive a medal for her actions. She would frame it and put it next to her merchant marine license. On the Indomitable, Admiral Park watched the enemy fleet fall apart. His crew was operating on no sleep and pure determination. Lieutenant Han had collapsed at her station 2 hours ago and had to be carried to the medical bay. She had saved humanity, and she would sleep through the final victory. The flagship, Eternal Dominion, was captured by a boarding party of human marines. They found High Archon OK in his command chair, surrounded by dead officers, his leg crushed and his ship dying around him. When the Marines pointed their weapons at him, he did not resist. "You have won," he said quietly. "Finish it." The Marine commander, a woman named Sergeant, shook her head. "We're not here to kill you. We're here to arrest you." OK did not understand. Arrest for what purpose? For war crimes, for the deaths of millions of civilians on Earth, for the attempted enslavement of our species. Sergeant's voice was hard, but she did not shoot. "You're going to face trial. You're going to answer for what you did." "Trial?" OK laughed, though it hurt his broken ribs. "The conquered do not put the conquerors on trial." "You didn't conquer us," Sergeant said. "You lost." She was right. When the final count came in, the numbers told an impossible story. Of 3,000 warships, 2,847 had been destroyed or captured. The remaining 153 had fled into fold space, racing back to territory to report the disaster. Humanity had lost 31,000 ships and stations. Most were civilian vessels converted for combat, the cargo haulers and mining platforms and research ships that had answered President's call. They had known they were going to die, and they had come anyway. 12 million people had died on Earth. Cities had burned. Countries had been devastated. The scars would take generations to heal. But Earth survived. Humanity survived. And they had defeated the greatest military power in the galaxy. The news spread across the stars within hours. Species that had lived in fear of for thousands of years watched in disbelief as the reports came in. A young species, barely old enough to have left there, had done what no one else had ever done. They had fought back, and they had won. 1 month later, Admiral Park stood before the Galactic Assembly. The Great Chamber held representatives from 200 species, each one watching the human with a mixture of curiosity and fear. You could destroy them, the assembly chairman said. He was an old creature from a species called the with blue skin and too many eyes. They are weakened. Their fleet is broken. You could invade their worlds, enslave their people as they enslaved others. Many species would help you. Many would celebrate. Park had thought about this. In the weeks since the battle, he had received thousands of messages from other species, offering ships and soldiers for a war of revenge. They had made enemies across the galaxy. Humanity could lead a coalition that would wipe them from existence. He could do it. He could become the conqueror that OK had tried to be. No, Park said. The chamber went silent. We did not fight to become what they are. We fought to protect our home, our people, our right to exist. If we destroy if we enslave them and burn their worlds, then we become the monsters. We become the thing we were fighting against. Then what do you want? The chairman asked. Park took a deep breath. They will release all enslaved species. Every person they have taken will be returned to their leaders will face trial for war crimes, not human trials but trials overseen by the assembly, with judges from the species they have wronged. And they will pay reparations, not to humanity, but to the species they conquered over the past 12,000 years. That is unusual, the chairman said carefully. Victors usually demand tribute for themselves. Earth was burned. Our people died. Nothing they have can bring them back. Park looked around the chamber at the watching representatives. But maybe some good can come from this. Maybe the species they enslaved can finally be free. Maybe the galaxy can finally see that there is another way, that you don't have to become a monster to survive. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, the representatives began to vote. The resolution passed unanimously. 6 months later, High Archon OK sat in a prison cell on a neutral station. He was waiting for his trial to begin. He had expected to be executed by now, or at least tortured. Instead, he had been given medical care for his injuries, food, water, and a small window that looked out at the stars. He did not understand these humans. He had spent 600 years conquering species across the galaxy, and he thought he understood how the universe worked. The strong took from the weak. The victors destroyed the defeated. That was the natural order. But the humans did not follow the natural order. The door to his cell opened. Admiral Park walked in, alone and unarmed. "High Archon," Park said. "Admiral," OK watched the human sit down across from him. "You should not be here without guards. I could kill you with my bare hands, even injured." "You could try," Park said calmly, "but you won't." "How do you know?" "Because you want to understand. You want to know why you lost, why we showed mercy when you showed none." OK was silent for a moment. The human was right. "Tell me," he said finally, "why you could have destroyed us, taken our worlds, made us suffer as we made others suffer. Why did you not?" Park looked out the small window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was healing. His daughter had finally gotten married last month. He had made it to the wedding after all. The cities were being rebuilt. The dead were being mourned. Life was continuing. "When you attacked Earth," Park said slowly, "you said we were young. Too young to understand our place in the galaxy. Too young to deserve respect. I was wrong about your strength, but you are still young." "Yes," Park agreed. "We are. And maybe that's why we can still choose who we want to be. Maybe we haven't lived long enough to forget that there's another way." He stood up and walked to the door. "You spent 12,000 years building an empire on fear and conquest. And in the end, you were defeated by a species that has only been in space for a few centuries. Maybe being young isn't a weakness. Maybe it's a gift." He paused at the door. "Enjoy your trial, High Archon. I hope you learned something." He left. OK sat alone in his cell, staring at the stars, thinking about what the human had said. On Earth, a memorial was being built in Seoul. It would list the names of everyone who had died in the battle, soldiers and civilians, pilots and engineers. the brave and the scared, and the ordinary people who had become heroes when their home was threatened. The inscription at the base would become famous across the galaxy. Species would translate it into their own languages. They would teach it to their children. They would say it to each other when things seemed hopeless, when enemies seemed too strong, when all seemed lost. It read, "They came to conquer us and learned instead what humanity becomes when everything we love is threatened. The galaxy will never forget. Neither will we." And across the stars, in 1,000 languages, a new phrase entered common speech. When facing impossible odds, when standing against tyrants, when defending what mattered most, people would say, "Fight like you're defending Earth." They had come to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy something far more important. Some things are worth fighting for, and the species that remembers that will never truly be defeated.